All right, I'm so very excited to have all you here today. Having have the four coaches that set in motion what I feel is a culture of tough-nosed basketball in North Texas, and I still see it rippling, through today, whether it be through current high school coaching ranks or the successful humans that these men touched in their respected programs. Many of these guys ask, why would anybody want to hear from me? So William Shakespeare once wrote, "What's past is prologue," meaning that previous events set the stage for current situations. And so I think these gentlemen set that stage for many of us that are on this call today. Today I want to dive into servant leadership, the many layers of these guys' coaching trees, the way they built culture and toughness in their program, and then relationship building that all of these men were able to do that still touch many of us today. Um, so let me first introduce our guest. We've got Coach Stan Hicks with us today. Finished at Plano Senior High, also coached at Grand Prairie. Uh, I met this gentleman way back in the mid 90s when I moved to Texas. I was looking for a place to volunteer because that's the way I got all of my jobs. Coach Hicks was nice enough to bring me in, and he gave me validity when he really had no reason to. He just said, "Coach, go out there and coach what you think they need." So grateful you did this for me. So grateful you're here today, Coach. Secondly, we have Ron Powell, who's the head coach at North Mesquite. He took state finals there. Was at South Oak Cliff. He at least went twice there, and he's had a few college stops that he may speak about. Coach Powell influenced me through Tom Inman, which would share many of Coach Powell's wisdoms with me when I was coming up. He also, John Youngblood through his line. Coach Tommy Thomas spent 20 years coaching Texas basketball, averaging more than 20 victories a year. He ended up at the Colony from 86 to 2004, won many district championships, led his team to the 2001 5A Final Four. And Coach Thomas doesn't realize it probably, but he was a big influence on me as, several of my good friends were on his staff, Jeff Clarkson, Taz Millis, and I'd pick their brains on a regular basis, finding out, what he was doing over at the Colony. And then last but not least is Tom Quigley, longtime assistant at Plano East, former head coach at Naaman Forest. And this man has meant as much to my career as anyone I can point to. Uh, I had a front row seat to watch him take what I thought was a complete three-ring circus at Naaman Forest and ended up, winning a pretty big playoff game against Plano West when they were kind of at the peak of of their program. So, I want to thank each one of you for being here, being willing to give your time. I'm not surprised. It's what you've been doing all your life. Before we do get started, I want to thank East Bay Team Sales, Brent Flynn, for once again supporting what we're doing here. I'm going to raffle off a couple backpacks today based off of who signed in and things. So we'll get that done here in a little bit. So coaches, want to start off our discussion today around servant leadership. I see all of you men as servant leaders. You were and still are willing to grow coaches. You practiced acceptance of people. You practiced empathy. You're influencers more than leaders. And you pour into people knowing they had nothing to give back. And to me, that is servant leadership. So I want to just ask, was this a conscious decision that led you into this, or was it someone in your past history that led you this way? Coach Hicks, could you start us off on that?
Well, I don't know whether I have all the answers to that. I started off in basketball coaching with Pete Thompson, and he was always helpful to me and at Grand Prairie. When I went to Grand Prairie High, the only person I really got to hire was my assistant. And then every once in a while, I could sprinkle in an 8th grade coach every once in a while, and always look for people that were really interested in basketball, that had a burning desire really to improve their position and their lot in the basketball field. Then at Plano, I was able to hire the JV coach and then the sophomore and eighth grade coach. And we spent a lot of time together, always tried to hire young coaches. Wanted someone trying to come up into the profession. Also some people that could play, because on Tuesday and Thursday night, we like for them to come up and play our varsity kids. And we let our coaches kind of pick their team, and then we let the varsity kids pick their team. And we spent the summer, the coaches just beating the heck out of our varsity kids. So I don't know, out of necessity, I wanted to hire good people, someone with a good background. Missed on a few of them, but most, probably 99% of them turned out great. And we've got a lot of assistant coaches, eighth grade coaches that are still in the profession, and spend a lot of time with them. Like you said earlier, we would go to clinics together. We spent all summer together with summer camps and that summer league you mentioned. So we got to know each other fairly well, and communicate with each other back and forth. And I get to see some of them play sometime. We get to talk every once in a while. I know Wes Watson's on here. I always bragged about his man-to-man defense, and he disappointed me sometime this fall. He said he was going to zone a little bit, but we always stressed the man-to-man defense, and just had a good time with them. And I don't know what influence I had on them. I was picking their brain more than they was picking mine. So I think from every one of my hires, I gained a little knowledge. And I hope that answers your question.
No, I think that's a beautiful point, Coach, that, you feel you gained as much from them as they gained from you. And I know they feel opposite. Coach Watson appreciates you telling his 2021 game plan. But I'm going to read down this list real quick, Coach Hicks, for the panel. But this is, I know I probably left some people out, but this is a list of people that went through your system. Rodney Belcher, Tom Inman, Phil Parlin, Lance Shelton, Wes Watson, Wayne Leake, Brad Mauser, Jonathan Ellis. That's quite a list of coaches. Many of them have made state, won state, and several on this list will in the future. So they did gain a lot from you. Coach Powell, servant leadership, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, basically, I feel like Coach Hicks is that you look for people that had the same interests as you. So basically, TABC was one of my biggest influences, because I would go to the clinics, and that's where I would find my assistants. So, Tim Williams went through my program. Donna Caps, I hired that way, and she did pretty good. Ashley Crawford, she's an assistant now at UT Arlington. Jim Murphy, who you went from men's side to lady side and did well. And the guys that influenced me in kind of sparked the hunger for learning, because I knew I didn't know squat coming from little small town of Crandall. We had a new coach every year, and only one coach in the years we had knew anything about basketball. So learning was my key, and so that's why I looked for my assistants that wanted to learn. So guys like, I'm fortunate to be encouraged my first year as a junior high and assistant in high school, Ross Hall in Wolf City. And Ross was he just asked questions. Well, what would you do if this happened? And so they stimulated the thought process. Well, so I think that's what we have to do, is stimulate the thought process. But a next guy I worked under was Clayton Brooks in Sherman. And Clayton brought another aspect to the game that that was the details and fundamentals. And so Ross was the overview of the questioning of how the game is played. And then Clayton Brooks was the individual skills. So each one of those really helped me tremendously. And then we had some great high school coaches at that time. And so I studied all of those high school coaches, where some of them, it was just, whether it's Ellis Davis or Royce Cooper or Jerry Stone or any of those guys. And so that's the type of, they had aspects of the game that I wanted to copy, and that's what I tried to do.
Okay. Coach Thomas.
Yeah, I think that, again, it's reaffirming what Stan and Ron have said. We tried to hire young guys that could still play. I was never a good player at all, so if you had anybody you had to have somebody to demonstrate, and I really like for them to have the ability to play with the kids after school. Also wanted somebody that wanted to be a head coach. That was important to me. I felt like that was part of my obligation to them, was to try to give them the knowledge that I had, what little it was, to help prepare them to be a head coach. And then I also felt like it was my obligation to try to help them get that opportunity. And so that was important to me as far as that goes. We loved the game. I wanted all of them to want to have passion for it and to be involved with it as much as possible, as far as going to clinics, and they all worked camps for me. We were fortunate enough to be able to take some of them overseas with some teams. So that was a great opportunity. I've been blessed to have a few that have gone on and be extraordinarily successful, and couldn't be more proud of them. And I not being a player growing up, I had to kind of just steal from everybody. I worked for Stan my second year out, my first full year out of school, and I learned passing game, and so the other guys that I competed against later on, I tried to take from them. Ron mentioned Jerry Stone, and Royce Cooper, and all those guys were such great coaches. And every time we had a difficulty defending something, or things that other teams did well, we tried to try to mesh it into our program, into the talent pool we had at that time. So it was a blessing to get to be around the young coaches that I had. They gave me energy, and they've all heard the story, that I tell them, you got 3 to 5 years. I said, in 3 years, I will have given you enough information, hopefully, that you can go out and be a head coach. And I said, after 5 years, you got to move, because I got a wife. I don't need anybody that's going to stay with me forever. So, and never had anybody that stayed 5 years except for just one, and he got a head coaching job. And so, I was blessed to have assistant coaches that were phenomenal. So.
Coach Thomas, along the servant leadership lines, I'd always heard that, you kind of had a philosophy: as long as a kid wanted to stay in the gym and shoot, you were staying. You weren't the coach that said, I got to, I'm leaving at 5, I'm leaving at 6. If they wanted to shoot till 9, you and your assistants were staying there. That's an example of servant leadership. Where did that come from?
Well, again, not being a player, it's just what I observed that successful coaches did. You just have to, to put in the hours. And if a kid was willing to stay, then we were willing to stay. And never, I told them there was never going to be anything on Oprah that was going to help them be a better basketball player. So they didn't need to be home at 4. And so we encouraged them to stay every day, and we're really disheartened when they didn't. And then certainly, like I said, having those coaches be around, if they thought that it was important and that you valued that time with them, they appreciated it. And again, that we needed all the practice we could get. So.
Okay. Coach Quigley, I witnessed this firsthand with you. Servant leadership to me means, picking up the locker room, sweeping the gym floor, modeling what you expect your players to do sometimes. So can you talk a little bit about servant leadership from your side?
Sure. Michael, I first of all, I want to say how I'm humbled to be part of this group that you invited, because for 37 years I coached, but 31 of those years I was an assistant. So as an assistant, I always tried to be there before the head coach, get everything set up. I followed leadership roles. I was fortunate enough to watch Coach Hicks one year as I was assistant at Clark under him, and then I really followed from a distance of the way he ran camps and leagues and stuff like that. What I always looked for was a gym rat coach, a coach that was going to be in the gym with me, not looking for a reason to leave, not looking for a reason, like you said, not to sweep the floor. If you recall, the first thing we did when we got there, we painted the locker room and painted the film room, and we put all the coaches a paintbrush in their hand and I want to see how they're going to do. But I already knew, because I had worked with these guys. I think the most fortunate thing we have sometimes is when you can hire somebody that you respect, because you already know what they're capable of. I had a player in Jeff Clarkson that I hired as my first assignment as a first assistant, but I had also talked to Wes Watson because I'd seen his work ethic, but he'd already committed to McKinney, and I couldn't have him. He didn't want to go against that. So that was perfect. A guy that stands up for what they believe and what they say they're going to do. Long hours. I like the gym rat mentality. My first job I got hired by someone was a guy named Art DePatre. I started coaching in New Jersey, and Art DePatre, the first thing he wanted to do is send you out and scout and what you would come back with, because that's real important as an assistant and also in service leadership. I learned a lot from Stan that I wasn't aware of breaking down film and video. He had like the most extensive video room at Plano Senior High. It was amazing. So those are the type of things I look for in coaches. Can they scout a game? Are they willing to be in the gym? Like Tommy was saying, how important it is to have young coaches that can get out and play. I mean, it got depressing for our kids because they'd want to play one-on-one after practice, and Coach Clarkson never let them win. Dave Wilson certainly wouldn't let them win. I mean, these guys could shoot it, and they're great examples of staying in the gym until the last kid. We were fortunate when I was at Naaman that school got out at 2:30, and I pretty much had to run the kids out at 4:30 because a lot of them had to go get and work jobs at 5, like from 5 to 8, to have little part-time jobs. So if you recall, we had a time frame that was a little different. Plus, we were an AB block, so that meant more time for coaches. We were fortunate in the facilities. I wanted coaches that were going to work summer leagues and summer camps and stuff like that didn't have a reason or excuse why they couldn't do it. It was like a year-round commitment, and I think I learned that a lot from Coach Hicks.
Okay, thank you. So whenever you use the term servant leader, it almost sounds weak sometimes, that servant part, I believe. But I know you guys were tough on your players, you were tough on your assistants, and especially your better ones. So what I'd like to talk about now is how did you balance those two different dichotomies of being a leader and having to be a hard ass? Because we know that's what ultimately, pushes kids and men, women to be their best. So Coach Powell, could you talk a little bit about, how you balanced that out?
Well, basically, never ask a player to do something you wouldn't do. And so, I ask them to play hard and play smart. So they had to be mentally engaged into the game. So and then you had the expectations that go along with that. So you had to teach the skills, and then you got to teach the knowledge. So you had to be a teacher of the game. And so, like coaches were saying, you started off by showing, okay, I'm going to sweep the gym floor for your safety because I don't want you slipping. I don't let students walk across the gym floor because it wears out the varnish, and those are slick spots. So you understand, letting them know that you're putting yourself out there, and that you want them to put themselves out there. And you teach them how to protect themselves, not just to play hard, I'm in your face, but how to protect yourself when you're in someone's face, how, those cheap shots that they'll give you, how to protect yourself from those, just like a boxer. And so anyway, that's basically just be an example and show respect. I didn't cuss the players. Matter of fact, I once said, if I ever cuss, then I will run 5 miles, because every player had to run 5 miles if they said a cuss word. And so when they would run, I would run with them, because I hadn't taught you how not to control yourself. You didn't have the self-discipline. So I'm going to run with you. Now, your punishment was not running the 5 miles. It was listening to me all the 5 miles. That was the punishment. So anyway, it's doing little things like that where you show respect, you don't cuss them, you have interest in them after workout, but during workout, you're teaching. And I want you to be a learner. And I want you to teach also if you're a veteran player. So all veteran players had to teach. And so you empower them to do that.
I think that's perfect, Coach. Don't ask them to do something you wouldn't do. Coach Thomas, how did you balance? I mean, I've talked to some of your players in one-on-one, so I know how you were. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, had I run 5 miles for every bad word I said around my kids, I'd be anorexic looking. I can tell you that. Coach Powell, obviously I have great respect for, and I think every coach has to kind of find their own way. And but I was hard on him. I think that I considered it almost a parenting situation. Was that I think sometimes nowadays you see people trying to be their friend, and they didn't need a friend. They needed a coach. Yeah. And they needed a coach that would set the rules and set the guidelines and set expectations, and then there needed to be accountability. And but they also need to know that that you'll do anything for them. And so, you can just rip a kid for whatever he needs to be, got into, but you got to come back and love on him. And it just takes a little love, for that kid to understand that, hey, you're there for him all the time. And I think that one of the things I always tried to encourage with my kids was that the minute we stepped off the floor, hey, it was all about me doing whatever I could to help you be successful, whatever it was in the classroom, or, if there was issues at home, whatever I could do. And so I think once they realize that you love them and that you care about them, just like your own children do, they want to be held accountable. They understand that there's repercussions for not doing what they're supposed to, whether it's running because they didn't get back on defense, or whatever it is, towel pushes, or just whatever it is that you're trying to reinforce that they need to do a better job of. You know, again, if you'll just love on them and make sure they understand that you have their best interests at heart, I think that that's kind of what we felt like helped us be successful.
Coach Hicks.
You know, I know Tommy's going to probably laugh at this, but I always just try to be very positive with my and I know John's on here, and I first thing I do when I see my ex-players is usually apologize to them. But between the good and the average and the bad players, I thought every player needed to know their role. The good ones, you know, they had to carry us. The other players, they needed to find other things to do. And whether it be screening or just playing defense or blocking out, everybody is not alike. I think sports teaches that better than anything. I tell my grandson all the time, you know, everybody is not alike. You have got to do a little bit more than your teammate. Our good players, you know, I expected a lot out of them. I expected them to stay in the gym and shoot and do things and be a leader, and make those other guys just a little bit better. And every time I see a coach, usually they ask me if I'm being positive today. I've been positive the last few years because I'm not coaching, but I was very blunt when they didn't do what we expected to do. If they didn't get to where they're supposed to go, we might stop and run the bleachers. We might stop and just run. And that's what I apologize, you know, to them most about, is because some of the punishments I put them through. But I think expectations, and you have to talk to the kids kind of one-on-one a lot. And they have to know what you expect and why you expect it. It's kind of like a guy that can run the 100-yard dash. Not everybody can run the 100-yard dash. So if I had a good player, I expected him to be good. Average player, we're going to find you something you can do, maybe to help that better player be better. So everybody, I think everybody has to understand their part. And I know sometimes I failed in that. But like Tommy said, after practice, it was kind of over. If I chewed out John Ellis during practice, after the practice was over, you know, it was over. Next day I'll start again. But you couldn't live with it. I mean, you just couldn't send them home in a real bad mood. You had to make them believe that you cared about them as an individual. I mean, we sent many of them to tutorials for bad grades or bad citizenship grades. They were more than just basketball players.
Okay. I think kind of the common theme coming through is love them first, set high expectations, and you definitely got to communicate between those. So, Coach Quigley, the Last Dance been on. You know, the Bulls had Michael Jordan, which the documentary kind of pointed out that if you weren't pulling your weight, you know, with the Bulls, he was going to let you know it day in and day out. So do you have one person you could point to that you've coached that kind of was that person for you, you know, within your team?
You know, the funny thing is, you talked earlier about discipline, and I want to bring that up because I paid attention to what Matt Seaman said last week when he talked about not disciplining the whole group anymore. That was a thing that we used to have to do. I mean, because you want to, and the thing we used to have to do was the kid that made the mistake or problem, he'd stand and watch the rest of the team run, and then he'd have to explain it to him in the locker room. That was interesting. But yeah, we had a kid at Clark years ago that was probably one of the best examples. And I talked to Tommy Thomas about him the other day, the kid named Mike Roberts, who was just one of these kids who run through the wall. And literally, we were playing the South Garland tournament, and I'm coaching sophomore basketball, and he tried to run through the wall, split his head open and stuff like that. We had probably the finest leader I ever coached was a guy named John Perkins. People think the greatest player you ever had is Jimmy King. I always say, you know, John Perkins was not the greatest player, but probably the greatest leader we had when we were coaching. At Naaman Force, when I moved over there, I had to get the smallest to be the leader. We had a kid named John Paul Johnson that was only like 5'9", but he had to talk kids into playing, because we go over to play the Colony in Plano West in our first ever scrimmage. And Tommy's looking at me like, dude, quit calling timeout. It's a scrimmage. We had to call 3 timeouts. We couldn't get the ball across half court. If you recall that, Matt, you and Brady and Bracy and Darren we couldn't get the ball across half court. And Tommy says, and then kid comes to the huddle, and John Paul grabbed him. And this kid was 6'5", 6'6", Jason Ford. And he says, Coach, why are we doing this? Why are we playing these guys? And John Paul at 5'9" grabbed him by the shirt. He says, because we want to be like them. And I thought that was a great example for the little guy stepping up. I like that. And I always thought it was real important as you said, service. I played for a coach when I was a 5th grader, and I made the 8th grade basketball team. His name's Tommy McDonald, and he was a role model for me. And I went and started coaching at our same school. But he always said, I got to be as good to the guy at the end of the bench as I am at the guy at the front of the bench. That's a real important thing that I think that I always learned from him.
It's good, Quig. Benjamin Franklin once said, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. So the coaching tree, or, you know, Coach Inman and I were talking, your guys is more like an onion, because as you keep peeling it back, there's guys 2 or 3 generations down the group that are coaching that are influenced by guys you influenced, that are still coaching that same philosophy. So some of you have mentioned it before, you know, and I think Coach Thomas, so many coaches cling to that staff and they don't want them to go anywhere. I've even heard of head coaches giving their assistants bad recommendations so they wouldn't leave on them. So how important was it for you as a head coach to grow that next generation of players and coaches? And, you know, what are some ways you felt you best accomplished that? Coach Quigley, you've got some people out there coaching.
Well, I tell you, I was fortunate when I was living and coaching in New Jersey for 3 years. And I finally got my degree, because in New Jersey, you could start coaching when you had 60 college credits, because there was a coaching shortage. And I sent out a resume to Texas, to Plano, and I sent a resume to a school in North Jersey. And I got offered the job over the phone by Coach Clark. And he said, well, you're going to go to work for 2 coaches, actually. He goes, Coach Fobb and Coach Mosley at Plano East. So I went to work for him, and I learned so much from Coach Mosley. As far as organization, he would write a practice schedule and then expect you to copy it. And he did it on a 3x5 card. You knew that was going to be a short day. And if it was a 4x6 card, it was going to be a long day. So you just tell what type of day it was going to be practice wise. And he taught me how to write a practice schedule. And that's one thing when I never bugged my assistant coaches as to, you know, hey, let me see your practice schedule. I want to go through and I want to see what you're doing in practice. Because we had 3 separate gyms and we were practicing different, but I always asked to see their practice schedule. I just wanted to see it. Just the fact that they took time to organize their thought process of what they were trying to get accomplished that day. And then I also learned something a lot from Coach Adair. Coach Adair was, I remember going and watching Coach Adair at Vines against Tommy Thomas's team at Clark, and it was, you wouldn't believe the enthusiasm of the game at a Clark High School game. I thought it was a 5A state championship game. Wouldn't you agree, Tommy? The gyms were packed. Tommy's teams were undefeated. It was unbelievable. But as far as assistants go, I have a lot of guys that one of them is a former player named Matt Brady. He's now the assistant at Maryland. He's been the head coach at Madison, and Jeff Clarkson, and of course you, Michael. So proud of you. Joe Duffield. Joe had a law degree from Santa Clara and comes to me and wants to former player that wants to get into coaching. And I had to explain to his dad, and his dad's like, "What are you thinking?" And now he's doing a great job at Lake Highlands. I had Chris Roberts, one of the Roberts boys, Dave Wilson, who's now the principal at Salina High School. Dave was an unbelievable player in high school. My first year at Plano East, where it comes down to us or Pierce, and we had them scouted so well. And he only got 37 on us in the game that decided them to go to playoffs. I thought we were defensive specialists. Kevin McGill, he was a youth minister in Garland. And I can't look past the guys you hire because he's still there coaching 9th grade B team basketball, and he just loves that position. Randy Love at Garland, Coach Nuttall. Stephen Fryer, a former player that's coaching up in Frisco now. I think every year he's coached, he's done fantastic. Matt Mitchell's still coaching. Dave Black was my roommate in college, and we always got along great. He'd come over from Wiley, and he scrimmaged us at Plano East, his varsity with my JV. And then, you know, Michael, how successful he was at Wiley. He built that up nicely. And then Wes Watson at Armstrong. We had a lot of guys that I work with. Coach Bleedorn, you know, those guys, they all became head coaches. And I don't feel like they're part of my tree, but I worked alongside of them. Thus, I never talked down to them because I was an assistant with them.
Coach Hicks, how important was it to you, you know, as a head coach to grow coaches? You have quite a lineage.
Well, I thought it was very important. I kind of like Tommy. Every time I talk to a coach, first interview, if I was going to hire the guy, I always told him that I would help him get any job except mine. And I didn't want my coaches staying very long, because in Plano it was a movement factor. If I hired an 8th grade coach, his next move was probably to the sophomore level, then from sophomore to JV level. And if I got someone that was stuck at one spot or the other, and that's not a very good term to use, but if somebody stayed too long, it stopped our movement. And I wanted to make sure every coach knew that there was a possibility that they could move up. And we spent a lot of time together. We were lucky enough. I talked Coach Clark into letting me start a summer league program the second or third year here, and he wanted to make sure we had the insurance. He wanted to make sure we had time to do it, and we solved all those problems, and we got the summer league started. And Tom Quigley, he was helped me a lot, but we got that started, and our coaches were referees, and so we got to see them how they reacted with kids. And on my side of town, we had summer camps, and again, we were able to hire them to work with our summer camp. So usually from about 8:30 in the morning to maybe 9:30 at night, we were spending a lot of time together. We'd go to the grocery store, and at noon meal, we might have bologna sandwiches. Tommy would probably call it round steak, but we would eat, you know, several meals together, and we got to know each other. And I wanted those guys to succeed, and if there was a job open, I might mention it to them, and probably some of them thought I was trying to get rid of them, but I really wasn't. I was trying to help them. So it was very important that we hired coaches that I felt like would do a good job and have a possibility of moving on. And it's not bragging. It's probably them overcoming me. But every one of my assistants, went on to be a head coach in some sport. I really pride myself in them of that. And some of them are still coaching. Some of them went on into administration. Some of them got smart and got out. But we had a good time together. And the only thing I really feel like I kind of let everybody down on is our players. I should have done a better job keeping up with our players, because they go in 1,000 directions, and you don't know where they are now. I know John on here, he helped us get back in touch with several of them, but if I could give any advice to young coaches or older coaches about ready to get started in varsity level, is keep up with your players, because at Plano, as soon as that season was over, if we had a kid go off to college, there was very few of them I ever had a chance to go see, and I should have taken time to do that. But there's always next season. We got to get ready for next season, and just as a coaching tidbit, keep up with your players, get to know their families, their kids, and I don't know, I'm not smart enough to put it all on a computer or anything, but I know these coaches now can, and keep up with them.
I think that's great advice, Coach. And, for all those coaches out there, your social media now is a pain in the butt, I know. But for me, it's been a way to keep in touch with kids that I taught in 1993. I still have on Facebook. So, Coach Powell, we talked a little bit earlier, about, your coaching tree a little bit. You probably got flat ass lucky, you got Inman out of there and got him on a successful track somehow. But tell me a little bit, how important it was for you to grow coaches.
Well, it's critical to your program because you want teachers under you. And so you had to make sure what they were teaching was what was appropriate for your program. So going over to the details of this was critical. So my rule was, if you will stay with me 2 or 3 years, I will guarantee you I will get you a head job. And so that's what I did. When they were ready, I said, all you do is you let me know when you're ready and I'll help you look for the job. And so I was fortunate enough to have 2 or 3 of them go into college level. Some of them, most of them became head coaches, basketball coaches. Some of them were very successful. I was lucky. Tom was, Inman helped me a great deal at South Oak Cliff. He was a guy coming out of New York, Chicago mentality, where he's a bartender at that time, and he said he wanted to learn basketball and helping a basketball program. So I was at Sox, so I said yes, and so I was fortunate to have him and Rob Wright both help. And they both wound up doing great. But their time that's put in needs to be rewarded. And you have to do everything you can to ensure they have success. And so I was lucky enough that when Tom felt he was ready and he finished his degree, he gave he found the Plano job open. I told him that was a great place to go. And I called Stan and recommended him. And probably uh, you know, I would have loved to have had him there at SOC with me, but that was a very difficult situation. They didn't want anybody that knew basketball there. I had enough problems already with the issues there. But anyway, then, um, but if they want to learn, then they've got a chance to excel. And like all the coaches have said, that you got to get individuals that want to excel and be good. And that is contagious to your players. That ambitious and willing to learn is contagious. So anyway, that's basically it.
I like that. So I got a feeling all four of you gentlemen got to hire all the way down to possibly even your seventh grade coaches when you were coaching. Many of you have been in administration of late. And, you know, I never hired an assistant in 10 or 11 years of being a head coach at the junior high level, at the varsity level. I never got to hire one. Because nowadays the principal at the junior high is hiring that coach. If they can teach Spanish, then they can coach 8th grade basketball. So I guess my question is, how would you in today's system go about bringing those coaches on board, you know, and doing the same types of things? Coach Thomas, any ideas?
I've got lots of ideas, and I'm glad you came to. No, I think just like then, I generally hired the person, and then tried to let him know that I could teach him what little X's and O's that he needed to know to run our stuff. But I really was looking for the character, the integrity, the work ethic, the commitment. That was what was important to me in hiring those young guys. I tried to also make sure that, you know, 85% of your salary or 90% of your salary is teaching. So I tried to make sure they understood they had to be great teachers too. And that gains the respect of the faculty and the administration if they know that their coaches are good teachers and good role models in that sense. And so I went on recommendations a lot. I was fortunate enough to have guys like Stan. I tried to hire any of Stan's guys that I possibly could, and they never would leave Stan. But other coaches, you know, other middle school guys. Now we were fortunate. The guy that's the head coach of the college now has done such a great job. It's Cleve Ryan. Cleve was with me since 7th grade, and so he was 7th grade or 8th grade coach, and then 9th grade JV, and so again, promoting those guys from within. If you have that opportunity, that's always good. If you don't, and you have to go outside, then I would trust other coaches, and so I just think that you see guys at clinics. I saw Jeff Clarkson. I know he worked for Tom as well, but I ran into Clarkson when he was playing against the Baylor men's team in an exhibition game. And it just happened that Matt Saman was playing for Baylor at that time. And so Jeff went on to work with me as well. And now Matt's done a great job as a head coach. So we've been fortunate to have great coaches that went on to be head coaches. We've been fortunate to have players that have gone on to be head coaches. Lamont Smith was the head coach at University of San Diego and been at Washington and Arizona State. And Harold Baber was at Western Michigan and Oakland. And so we've been fortunate all along to have coaches that had a passion for the game. And so I just think that you need to make sure that you take advantage of your relationships and your friendships to find out who's a great fit for you as a head coach.
Gotcha. Going to take real quick. We were doing 2 raffles today. East Bay is giving away a couple backpacks. So the first winner of that raffle's Cleo Love. So congratulations, Cleo. I'll get your information off this and get it to East Bay. So, so the next thing I want to focus on is I believe people will grow into the conversations that we create around them. So I think the conversations we are having around our programs and teams are tough, are very important. When I think back on all four of your programs, your teams played with a certain amount of toughness. This was something that was obviously part of your culture. Can you tell us a little bit about the conversations you had around toughness, how you implanted toughness in a society that even back when you guys were head coaches, society was already starting to soften more than it is softening now. So what are some of those conversations you had around, we've got to be tough and these are the reasons and this is how we're going to do it? Coach Quigley?
Uh, uh, well, Michael, you recall what we played like when I was at East. Our JV and varsity teams were always tough, and we were strong. We spent a lot of time in the weight room. If we had a 60-minute practice, we spent 40 of it in the weight room on weightlifting days. We tried to have the mentality that we were the strongest team when we took the floor. That doesn't always dictate into victory, but I mean, Stan will tell you, we had some battles between Plano and Plano East, and the physical mentality of the game. I mean, it was unbelievable. So when you go to from Plano East to Naaman Forest, where they won 3 games in 4 years, and the first time you take them to the weight room, they say, "What does weights have to do with basketball?" Kid says that, and we're like, "Well, you're getting ready to find out." So we did the weights, we did the chair push-ups, we did the light roast, we did the heavy roast, we did the bench jumps, we did all that kind of stuff. But then we incorporated into a concept like we always had at East. Stan and at Plano and Plano East, I played at Plano, and the toughest thing was that tartan floor. Well, and it was very unforgiving when you came to dive after loose balls and things like that. But at Plano East, what we did, we carried that mentality that Mike Bridges had, where we played no out of bounds. You played across all 3 floors, and you brought it back to the basket that you were supposed to be at. That was tough. And we also had a no foul. There was no fouls called. We did drills like call 3 in the lane, where you'd circle around the lane, you toss the ball up, and 3 guys would be in there, and they had to score to get out. So, well, the little guy like John Paul, he'd never get out, but he had to fight and battle until he found a way to push somebody and then get spacing and stuff like that. So just the fact that you were playing through fouls, you're playing through all types of different circumstances, weight training and conditioning, and then keep it in line with your goals and goal setting. I think that's real important.
Okay. Yeah, Coach Quigley, I remember very well the wake-up call our Naaman Forest group got when we opened up with Plano. And after about 4 or 5 trying to cut against them, we just quit cutting and just stood. So
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in physicality as well. Coach Thomas, your teams were known for toughness. What's some ways you created that?
Well, I think there were many years that we weren't very talented, and so we tried to convince them that their only way to win was to be tougher and to guard and play defense. And then there were years where we really had great offensive players, and we tried to tell them that people thought they were weak and that they were soft because they had skill, and they would try to push them around and that kind of thing. So we tried to make sure that we had the right mental aspect and encourage them to do the things that they needed to do. And then, like Tom mentioned, we tried to spend some time in the weight room. We were big on plyometrics in the off season, and anything that we could do that just felt like that we were pushing them physically to make them tougher. And then, again, everybody has their own little favorite drills. We used to have a get tough drill where we would break out the block and dummy pads and put them in the paint and do some stuff with them. I'm sure that Matt and Cleve and those guys are listening or wondering about that, remembering that. But yeah, I mean, I just think that you have to have encourage physicality and show no quarter for weakness, and so it worked for us sometimes, and then sometimes it didn't. So I'm flattered that you would think that our teams were tough. That means a lot. Thank you.
Coach Hicks, you had to create some toughness, I would imagine. Kids in Plano drove nicer cars than we did. They were known to have a fairly easy life, but I know that's not true for every kid. But how did you, develop that toughness and fighting off adversity? Some of it I figure was through scheduling.
I tell you, I know Plano kids have that reputation, but I found that the Plano kids were very competitive. Now they may have lacked some talent in certain areas, but they could hold their own with a lot of people on toughness. But some things we did, I know our kids loved the weight jackets. We spent a lot of time in the off season, preseason, in the weight room, making them jump with weight jackets on up and down the court. We'd go out and run a mile in weight jackets, and I don't know whether they were getting tougher, but they were getting in condition. And then we spent a lot of time in the weight room, and we would jump the boxes, and we would climb the ropes, and just anything to, as our kids would say, anything to punish us, you'll do it. And really, we were just trying to make them stronger because the teams we played, we were not very good schedulers. We'd go play the Dunbars and the Duncanvilles, and if they were going to have a pretty good team, we seemed like we'd find them. And I know the last year or two that we played, we did some great scheduling. We scheduled Brad over at Coppell and Tommy at the Colony. And we had to play Brad the first night, and he beat us about 20. And then we rode over there on Friday night and played Tommy, and he probably had one of the best teams around. And I kept looking down at his bench, wanting, when are you going to take those kids out? And he beat us about 20. And I broke a rule that I always had: is never play an ex-player or an ex-coach. And that year I made 2 mistakes. And so we tried to play good people, and we had to be strong doing it. And I think that helped more than anything is the teams we played, the kids knew they better be ready to play
Okay. The time I did get to spend with you, it was only a month or so, but I do remember it was during off season, and you had everybody knows a performance course now. I think you probably might have developed the performance course program for them. Coach Powell, you coached, in the inner city at Dallas South Oak Cliff. So I've got a feeling you didn't have to implement a culture of toughness as much as to harness the adversity your kids were already going through. Can you talk a little bit about that, how you used that adversity, to build your program's toughness?
Well, basically, the toughness, whether I was at North Mesquite or at SOC, you had to get it under control or develop the mental concentration that you have to stay focused during a game. And so, like little activities I did was like every mental mistake you made was you had 25 fingertip push-ups. So when they first start, it was 10. But within 3 weeks, they were up to 25. But that mental concentration and getting yourself under control, so you stayed under control. The other thing, like at North Mesquite, we did basically bench jump 50 nonstop, no double touches. You had to do 100 barbell pushes, lateral push. So you had to go 100 times without stopping. No hesitation, no nothing. And the last 60 to 100 was focused concentration. Then on what do they call it? Pep rally days, when they had the gym, we went out and ran a mile. Every player had to run a mile under 5:35. Again, I'm teaching running, how to run correctly for a long distance, working on your cardio, but the mental toughness to push yourself when you think you don't have anything else. And run a 5:35 was pretty good. So every player had to be able to do it. And at SOC, it's the the push-ups, and I would have them run stairs. We were upstairs, so they might have to run 50 to 100 stairs, or they had to run until I got tired of checking on them. If they were negative, or if they did something they shouldn't do that would take them out of practice, like getting too physical with someone. So just developing that mental concentration, like if they were, like in the classroom, every child had to pass. I had also, every kid had to bring me a grades of his teacher. And these grades that they bring me, if any of them did not have all passing grades, they went to my office, which I could see, and they had to go in there with the tutor and listen to the workout, but they had to be tutored during that time until they had passing grades. So that was something they didn't want to do. They wanted to pass. And so the mental concentration that you need, so that teaching them how to control that aggressiveness. And 25 fingertip push-ups does a lot. At least it gets them out for about 2 to 3 minutes. Then they get right back in after it, and then they start over.
Okay. This next section, I want to talk a little bit about relationships and their importance. So Coach Thomas, I want to start off with you. You might be the master of relationships, in my humble opinion. So can you talk to me a little bit about when you were coaching, how important those relationships were to you? These kids obviously weren't just players to fill your win column.
Well, I love those kids in spite of the way they thought I treated them most days, and I was so appreciative of them. If you could tolerate me for 4 years, what an honor, that they would put up with me. And so, as I just talked to a kid in Quigley, remember him, a kid named Kevin Flannery that played at Clark and later at Plano High for Bridges, and he's 54. I was like just 8 years older than him, or 7 years older than him when I coached him in Plano, and I've talked to a couple other guys on that team, and so yeah, I think that you really, like Stan said, if you have to work at it, and so I try to reach out to former players. Cleve over at the Colony has been so great and gracious about allowing me to come back while he's been the head coach and come to the tournament, and lots of kids come back to the tournaments, and so then I can get their email or their cell numbers, and then I try to follow up. And then the same thing with coaches. I've been blessed to have a lot of great coaches that were friends, and all you guys that are on here as well, but I try to make an effort to call and check on them, and so and then you have to take advantage of that. If Matt Saman needs some help doing something, and I know that Cleve Ryan can help him, or I try to intercede there and make sure that there's people that we're looking out for each other. And the same thing with Coach Shelton and Coach Bass and all, I mean, just any of those guys that have been around forever. You know, again, if we can help young coaches or if we can help each other, check on each other. Now that Stan's such the age that he is, I feel that I need to check on him frequently to make sure that he's okay. So he's liable to be out there riding that tractor and just, you know, fall out or something. You never know. So, yeah, I mean, I just think that you have to work at maintaining relationships, and you have to look for opportunities to help your former players, and then help your former assistants as well. And again, I took that as an honorable thing that they would allow me to do that.
All right. I think, you know, you say you have to work at it, and I think that is very important. You have to work at keeping these relationships going. Coach Powell, just a little bit about how you built, you know, those relationships and things.
Well, really, I kind of let the athletes determine the relationship. Some of them, because I was so intense during workout, took them a year or two after they were out of the program before they kind of warmed up to me again. And so currently, you know, probably last week I had about 5 of them call me to check on my health. And so I just, I do whatever I can to help them. I mean, no matter if I hear one of my ex-players needs a job, needs some counseling, I try to get them in touch with the right person. I'm not a very good counselor. I'm just a basketball guy, and that's really was focus. So that's really kind of difficult for me, is the relationships. Some of my first kids I ever coached, I'm still friends with. And we still, you know, and then I worked with their kids. So I'm actually working with grandkids now. So that's, so anything I can do to help them, they know I'm still here for that reason.
Well, Coach Powell, I think that's quite a legacy, that you did do a good job of building relationships, that kids are still willing to let you work with their grandkids and children and things of that nature. Coach Hicks, you know, I know you're going to say the same thing. They didn't like me and yada, yada, yada. I know I know you did a great job of being tough, but yet putting your arm around and building relationships. How did you like to go about that?
Well, I try to keep up with all my coaches. Some of them have kids now that I will try to go see them play. I don't see many high school games. It's too easy to just sit in my recliner and watch the Big 12 or some of the other college leagues play. But every once in a while, I'll get out and go see their kids play. And I think that means a lot to them. I've got 1 or 2 players that will keep me informed of their teammates on certain teams. And I always enjoy talking to them about where they've gone in their lifespan. And some of them are very successful dentists. Some of them are doctors. Some of them maybe ex-convicts, but don't have many of those. Some of them are doing a great job at coaching, and always enjoy watching them play. And I know some of them's going, well, hey, you never come see me, but every once in a while I'll get out and go see a high school game. But I try to keep up with my ex-coaches, and through them I can find out maybe some people that I need to call and talk to. But during the course of football games, some of them will come back and watch football games, and we'll see them and be able to talk to them. But as I said earlier, I did a poor job, or I've done a poor job of just keeping up with my ex-players. They all think I probably hate them, but I really don't. You know, they put up with me for 2 or 3 years, and I got a certain love there for them, because I know I was not the nicest guy around, but hopefully they realize now that we were trying to make them a little better, better player, better citizen, and hopefully it worked.
I know it did. All 4 of you guys have very successful people out there, whether they're coaching, business, whatever they may be in. I'm going to finish up with this, and we'll finish up the call with this last thing. I believe your sales eavesdrop on your thoughts. Basically, the things you're thinking, eventually you live and believe. So I want to finish up with this last question for you guys, because I believe this is so important for us to talk about today, because it's, you know, something very easy for kids, adults, business owners, teachers, you name it, to conduct themselves in. What I'm referring to is a victim mentality. I don't believe any of your teams followed that. You know, it just wasn't meant to be. That's the way it goes. It wasn't our time. Could go on and on with those different things. So how did you guard against this victim mentality and, you know, what I see as a mindset flaw? Coach Hicks, I'm going to start with you, because your teams could have had a victim mentality when you went and played Boddicker and Duncanville, and you went and played Coppells and the Colonies, and your kids very easily could have said, you know, felt a victim mentality going into those situations. How did you, you know, keep them from having that?
I don't know whether we ever allowed them to have that.
And how?
Well, that's a good question. I always thought it was an honor to play those good teams, and we had a chance. One year we was playing DeMatha, and I didn't feel like we were a victim. Hey, we had an opportunity. For us, if we beat them, man, that'd been something. And we got beat 8 points, and we still won. But I always thought playing good people gave us an opportunity to compete. And whether we won or not during non-district, yeah, I wanted to win every game, but that really wasn't what we were all about. We wanted to go play good people and compete. And yeah, I would be mad on the bus going back because somebody didn't make a pass or didn't make a shot or didn't box out. But at the same time, I wanted our kids to feel like they could compete against anybody. And sometimes we won, most times we lost. But I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid to lose. If it made us better, I was satisfied with that. Sometimes I thought back, you know, after you look at your win-loss record and everything, and you go, what if I hadn't have played Duncanville and Dunbar or DeMatha? What would it be like? But I enjoyed the good competition, and if we got ahead of somebody, I kind of got bored. I wanted to be competing, and I hope that our players sensed that. I'm sure I did a poor job of communicating that, but I think the competition was much more than the win-losses. I wanted everybody to feel like we could roll out there against anybody and we're going to compete. We may not beat them like Tommy beat us as bad as he could, but you know, he had 3 Division I players, and I did not have any Division I players on that team. But It didn't matter to me. I just wanted to compete against them. Just to be able to say we played those guys.
Yeah.
I don't guess I allowed our players to think that way. And how we did it, I don't know. We just scheduled somebody and we rolled out there and played them.
All right. Coach Powell, how did you guard against victim mentality?
Well, a lot like Stan, no matter what our talent level was, our philosophy was we were going to figure out a way to win. And that was that's the bottom line. And like Stan said, playing the best competition you could. I've always tried to play in 3 top flight tournaments a year that had at least 16 teams in the tournaments, so that we would be forced to play really good people. And no matter how much more talent they had, we felt like we could win through the fundamentals and effort. And, sometimes it didn't work out. And so we weren't victims. We just didn't do a good job of outsmarting them and out hustling them. So that's basically what we tried to do. It's, you break it down. What I used to try to do is when a player, you're competing against your other player, and how many points is that other player that you're defending scoring? How many are you scoring? And making it on a personal level, so they took ownership in their play, and where they were outperforming the other player in effort. In other words, you grade them out totally. And so, sometimes you lose. And that was just part of the game, learning, okay, now if I would have just done this one cross out, block out more, we would have won. Or I had 2 turnovers and 2 bad shots, that would have been the difference. And so you never thought about yourself not winning. That was not a possibility. You're not thinking about that. We're just going to think about winning.
Okay. So it's pretty much all your conversations throughout your practice days, after games, before games, is all focused on success and winning.
Yes. Success in your defensive techniques, success in your layups or your fundamentals or your rebounding. Everything was based on that. And so, and then you go back and you grade the kids. I graded, where I was weird is that I even graded out workouts. So every workout was charted and graded. And it was graded on a quarter court level, and it was graded on a transition level. So your shot selection or your shot percentage on transition is a lot better than your quarter court, because you take a lot poor shots in a quarter court setting. So anyway, that was it, basically.
Gotcha. So basically, accountability, holding yourself at a personal level, keeps you from feeling like a victim. Coach Thomas, I got a feeling you didn't let your teams fall into this. And as a businessman, people can fall into those same things. You're in both boats now. So can you speak a little bit on that?
Well, like Coach Powell and Coach Hicks and Coach Quigley, we just could try to compete, and everything we did in practice was was tried competitively driven, and again there was nothing more fun for me than to go on the road and try to take somebody's heart, and just that, to me, if you could just, if you could get somebody in their own place, our kids they loved that opportunity. And so, and we tried to embrace that and encourage that mentality. I'm sure Matt and Cleve and those guys are listening will tell you Often I would tell them the only reason you got feelings is to get them hurt, and that you need to leave those at the door whenever you come to the gym or come to the locker room and we're in film session, because we're trying to get better every day. And so the one, and same thing in the business community, now, and I think that's why one of the reasons my ex-coaches are always successful in the business community, like yourself, is that you get your tail kicked on Tuesday, you got to pick up and get after it on Wednesday. And there were lots of times that you got kicked on Tuesday and Friday. And sometimes you were lucky enough to get beat on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But there's no whining about it, because you got to go back to work. And so in the business community, if you hear no, well, big deal, get over it, move on to the next one. And so I think that all those parallels draw to sports. And I think that, again, if you feel sorry for yourself, you can sit around and have a pity party all day long, but you're not going to win games and you're not going to make money. So you got to get after it, and there's nobody to blame but yourself if you're not successful.
I love that, Coach Thomas. Coach Quigley, I had a front row seat, watching you brand success and overcoming a victim mentality. When we got to Naaman Forest, it was all victim mentality. I watched you brand success. Can you just talk a little bit about what your thought process was going into that, please?
Yeah, like Coach Powell said, when I grew up playing basketball, I think I played against his teams at North Mesquite when I was playing for Reggie Davis at Plano. And like Coach Hicks said, you didn't have to worry about that when you're growing up in Plano. Everybody else had to worry about that. We didn't lose many games, and taking that, like you said, over to Naaman Forest, they had won 3 games in 4 years, and the coach that was there was a good friend of mine, great guy. He just lost the kids. Hey, we go out there and we scrimmaged Colony and Plano West the first night. And I think we didn't score the first 2 sessions in the scrimmage. We didn't score against Plano West. We didn't score against Colony, and then we go out the first 7 games, and we lose all 7 games, and we finally win a game, and that's the game we talked about. We never talked about the past game. We never watched bad film, because all they were going to do was get discouraged. When you have a kid in the scrimmage, and we're scrimmage Colony, and then the 3rd time out, you remember Jason Ford saying, "What are we doing here? We can't play against these guys," because he was part of a process where the kids were actually going up in the stands when they were out of the game, eating popcorn with their friends, and the coach would re-enter them in the game. We saw actual video of that, didn't we, Michael? Mm-hmm. And we couldn't believe it, but I mean, that's what we had to overcome. We weren't used to it as a player growing up. I wasn't used to that type of mentality. So we couldn't watch film. We couldn't go back and watch the film of a bad film. You just had to go on and continue to practice hard and play hard. And in the midst of this Zoom that we're doing, Michael, I'm getting a message from Coach Parlin. Thank you. But Coach Hicks, you'll appreciate it. I just got a text message from Pat Easterly. Talk about a skinny kid that ended up being a good player for us, man. Pat, I got together with him last year, and in Wisconsin with his son. He's got a 16-year-old son. I coached Pat when he's 16, and we went to a Milwaukee Brewers game and had a great time, and that's keeping in touch. And then John Paul texted me. He says, perfect combination of discipline and care. That's great to get from an ex-player, Michael.
So, I'll talk a little bit about Coach Quigley just real quick. I know when we got over there, he went into branding mode of success and, not being a victim all the way from, he mentioned us painting the locker room. He had John Wooden's pyramid of success. He had quotes about success. There wasn't a place you could look around Naaman Forest that you didn't have success in your face one way or another. And like he said, we didn't talk about, the past and the bad other than to get through it. Got a question from our panel real quick. I'm going to unmute Jonathan Ellis. Jonathan, I think you're on. Go ahead and ask your question if you would.
Well, first of all, Coach Oldham, thank you for doing this, and the panel. I mean, this has just been the best 90 minutes that you can imagine, just for someone like me that kind of grew up idolizing y'all, watching y'all, and the players that played for y'all. I wanted to know one thing of, I think it doesn't matter if it's the old era of basketball or the new era. What is kind of that one non-negotiable? And I can hear Coach Hicks in my head telling me, get midline right now, get midline, get midline. But what is that one non-negotiable that you guys always had for your teams or your players to be as successful as y'all were?
Coach Thomas, you want to take that one first?
Oh, I just think effort, and I mean, bringing it every day and giving, you can't just take a day off because you're tired or because you had a fight with your girlfriend or, you made a bad grade. Once you step on the floor, you got to give me what you have. And so that I didn't have much patience with anybody that didn't feel like being there that day.
Coach Powell?
Well, probably the main thing I'd like for them to get is that you gotta have fundamental skills, and you gotta have defense, and you gotta rebound, and you gotta have good shot selection. And if you do those four things, you're going to have good things happen. And but they've got to be well-versed in the fundamental skills. That's critical, so they don't beat themselves. You got to first, I took over at SOC, and they hadn't had a winning season in 2 years. And the college coaches said, well, hey, they don't have any talent coming. Well, it was the most talent I'd ever seen. That's more than I ever had at North Mesquite in all the years I coached there. I coached there 17 years, and they had more on that one team my first year than I ever had. And so the first thing they have to do is learn how not to beat themselves. And so we went back to the basics. Every turnover, we didn't get to work out until in October that year because the athletic director wouldn't let us in the gym. The cheerleaders had it over us. So anyway, long story short, the turnovers were, my players started scrimmaging. They had 50 turnovers in the first half. I knew right then what I had to do because they were just going to beat themselves. So as a coach, first you got to get fundamentally sound. Then you can start teaching the other parts of basketball. And if that's the case, you have a chance to win. I think when I took over at North Mesquite, they had won one game in district in the history of the school. And we were able to come, and we lost all the starters off that team. And so I brought up the JV, and that was my first varsity team at North Mesquite. And we had a winning season and had a winning season in district, record in district. And it was not because of the coach ahead of me knew more X's and O's, but I just focused on turnovers, good defense, rebounding position, and good shot selection. And that's what made the difference. And I think that's what makes the difference with any team in the country. Canyon women win every year for that one reason. They're not great at anything. They're just so doggone good at the basics. So that as a coach, I think that's what your focus should be on.
Okay. Coach Thomas has got effort as a non-negotiable. Coach Powell's got fundamentals as a non-negotiable. Matt Saman chimed in and said Coach Thomas used to say the game, which I think that's a great statement. Coach Quigley,
Yeah,
non-negotiable.
you know, we posted right on the wall as soon as we took the things that we had that we were used to saying, the 3 E's: effort, enthusiasm, and execution. There's nothing, you got to have effort. That's the non-negotiable. Enthusiasm, that's everybody on the team, everybody on the bench supporting each other. And then we had the word, I mean, it's old school stuff. The word team in big and the little me below it. That was another one that we always posted in our locker rooms: big team, little me, that everybody's pulling in the same direction. And then, you know, like you said, the pyramid of success and things like that. And I think that's, to me, was the non-negotiable, was the effort, enthusiasm, and the execution was huge. Sometimes we'd start the game and just turn it to make sure we could, you know, maintain our offense, get our offense going. We weren't always about outscoring our opponents. Sometimes we had to keep the score down and give us a chance to win.
Okay. And Coach Hicks, non-negotiables.
Well, I don't know who told me this when I was very young coach, is that it didn't matter what I knew. It was a matter of what I stressed. And so I think when I heard that, just try to be good in something. I mean, we pride ourselves in how we played defense. And John said we did have rules where we would always encourage them to get to the midline and be in the help position. I think they have to know, they have to make good decisions. And that's on the court, out in the public. Another thing, they had to believe in themselves. They had to have a little confidence. And I probably worked against that a lot, but if they could put up with me, they could put up with their opponent. And also, as Ron said, you know, learning how to take good shots. I mean, what is a good shot for one player is not a good shot for the other. And I feel sorry for coaches now having to teach the 3-point line. Everybody can shoot a 3-point shot. There's a few even can make it, but I would have to convince some people that's not their shot. And about half of my coaching career was with the 3-point line, without the 3-point line. And then we stressed blocking out. If we could defend you one shot, we sure didn't want to defend you 2 shots or 3 shots. So after every game, I would go through the film and see who was blocking out and who wasn't. And we'd have a discussion about that the next day. And sometimes we'd even run because of our failure to block out. And for young coaches, nowadays, I don't know. I would probably be busy answering my cell phone on the bench with people complaining about, why are you running this or why are you running that? I feel for you guys that are coaching now with the media. Everybody has the right to voice their opinion about what a sorry job you did. But I respect the job you do. So just know you can't teach everything, but stress a few things and you'll be much farther down the road than trying to do what everybody does. Just decide what you want to do and maybe make sure you stress it.
Coach Hicks. Our last raffle item today, we drew a little early So the second backpack's going to actually go to Jonathan Ellis, and a big surprise there. So congratulations, Jonathan. I'll get that information to Brent. So just a little quick follow-up on that last, question about your non-negotiables. It's basically effort, fundamentals, execution, and basically we get what we stress and what we expect, I think, kind of. For you guys, having you on here meant the world to me. You all believe in physical defense. I believed in physical defense. I felt when I went into the women's basketball realm, if I could make my girls play as physical as a boys team on defense, we could flatten that curve to success a lot quicker. And I still think that in the boys or girls game, if you can teach physical defense, you can negate some skills from the other team and some things of that nature. So appreciate all you men. I have to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for sharing your knowledge. Most importantly, your valuable time today. Thank all of you coaches that's been getting on these Zoom calls. Want to get back to the game, just like these men gave to me. Pour as much into you guys as possible. Got to thank Brent Flynn at East Bay one more time for supporting this program, supporting all you coaches. And don't forget, I'm interviewing these panelists one-on-one. And, I've been working on getting those videos up. I've got Deb Harris one-on-one video up, and Matt Samons. Be getting Stephen Pierce and Jeff Clarkson's up soon. So those are on Facebook at Success Never Rests if you want to check them out. Thanks again. If you need anything, please reach out to me. If you want to get in contact with any of these gentlemen, reach out to me. I'll check with them, make sure they want to hear from you, but don't know why they wouldn't. But anyway, reach out to me, anything you need. Appreciate you guys again, and we'll see you next week.
Michael, could I say one thing real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, thank all the coaches for doing this today. It was tremendous. Way to work in, flatten the curve into the thing there. But one of the things that Coach Hicks said earlier, I did have a conversation with you, Coach, about maybe running some zone this year. We did run 3 possessions of zone this year, and all 3 times something bad happened. Other team made a couple of threes, and then we fouled a 3-point shooter on another one. So I saw the error of my ways. I will probably never run zone again.
No, don't give up too soon. Just gotta get